back to the to the room, because we have just started our journey with an interesting program. All right. So when we were planning this program for today's seminar, or this meeting, we were a little bit confused what kind of program we should build. And in the beginning, mixing the original idea of Isaacus register data, register holders, and then going to very visionary speeches about genomic information, that was done intentionally, because that's the way we think that the future will be. We need to mix different professions, we need to mix different capabilities in order to succeed. Another thing we were thinking, why do this in English, the Isaacus conference, Isaacus birthdays? But actually, we Finns, we love to hear views from outside. And I think it's very good to have these speeches in English so that we can have a fresh comments from one of the leading experts internationally. And some of you might already know that HIMSS Europe will be in Helsinki later in May next year. And that's going to be a very big opportunity for Finland. But now the next topic, is Finland unique in the national view? So I would like to welcome Mr. Charles Alessi, who has a long, various senior positions in an NHS, and who's also a chief clinical officer at the HIMSS International. I heard him speaking. I love his speeches and way of presenting. So please welcome Mr. Alessi.
Thank you. And thank you very much for the honor to present here, because I'm in a rather special place, Finland, for a whole variety of reasons. Hence the question, is it unique? And I get asked about, are we unique everywhere I go? HIMSS is a global not-for-profit, and we tend to travel the world and look at health systems all over the world. And is Finland unique? And in most places, it's very difficult to say a place is unique, because the challenges we face are the challenges that are faced in all countries of the world. But I think for a variety of reasons, Finland actually is unique, and I'll explain what I mean by that. I'll start by this presentation is a little bit more generic, and it may touch Finland perhaps a little bit less in cases, because I feel embarrassed in some respects, and humbled as well, to talk about the importance of digital technologies after what I heard this afternoon. This is a little bit irrelevant, I think. I mean, it's not irrelevant in terms of the digitization of national health systems in health and care is anything but irrelevant. But you are so far down this road that actually talking about it to you is a little bit different. But then I come from a world which is similar to this. And the ATHENAEUM, by the way, in England is not your art gallery. It's one of the oldest clubs in London, of which I'm fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, to be a member. And it's full of books. And I always think about health and care as being full of information, which is all there, but oh, by God, can you get hold of it? Do you know where to look? Do you know how to look? Can you actually put the two together? Can you make sequences? Can you look forwards and backwards? And if you notice, by the way, I wrote 1830 to 2030. Actually, I made a mistake. I should have written 1830 to 2130, because I'm absolutely sure that's what it will look like in 2130. You notice that there is some slight change. There is a computer in that photograph. That's a big deal. So, more on this digital transformation, and is it necessary to be thinking in terms of digital transformation? And the answer is yes, of course it is. Health and care systems globally are all in significant difficulty, in some countries more than others in terms of percentage GDP. Provider capacity is in difficulty in all jurisdictions. We have significant levels of physician burnout, perhaps less in Finland, because perhaps you are more digitally savvy over here than they are in other places, but in other jurisdictions this is a serious issue, an extremely serious issue, and we're doing some work in HIMSS specifically to try to address this. Outcomes and experience, well, they're not as good as they should be, and even the metrics that we've been using, like longevity, are slowing down, and if you look at disease-free years, actually those are static. We may be increasing in longevity, but we sentence people to the final years of their life in some misery, rather than being able to actually enjoy those last few years. And of course, we have the challenges of aging populations and multimorbidity, and you hear more than in a lot of places in Europe. And then we think, continuing on this theme, what's happening globally is we are moving to health and care systems which are moving away from activity basis in terms of the metrics that drive them, to what people and payers or governments think are more predictable health systems, i.e. personalized, accountable, value-based, depending where you come from, population health, if they're funded from government rather than from private institutions' health models. But the implications of that in terms of shift are very, very significant. In Western medicine, we are absolutely wonderful at managing medicine by body part. The problem is most of us actually have more than one body part, and the prescriptions for each body part don't necessarily fit with each other. So the medicine by body part to whole people is a really significant issue. And of course then, we move to the consumer and we move to the citizen. And it's very, very clear that in a system, as it evolves, the medicine by body part system, which is really the late 20th century type model, is really now much more focused on the consumer or the citizen, and that is partly related to the digital transformation. And of course, the moment you start thinking in terms of population-based, value-based system, then prevention and the adoption of personalized digital predictive public health, which is some work we're doing in the United Kingdom, in England specifically, in public health, around turning that into a digital personalized offering, is also much more important because, of course, as we very well know, and I'll come to this in a second, the things which actually make a difference to people are not necessarily only in the biomedical sphere. But the implications of that on data are also significant because the EMR many years ago was thought of as being, we'll get the EMRs, the electronic medical record sorted out, and then we'll have a solution, everything will be fine, we'll have managed that process completely. But now we understand that's really only a small part of what we need to actually help and assist people in their life journeys. And really from 100% to 10% is the way we think about it now. Because there are many more databases we need to be able to get a picture of people, to be able to assist people in their lives. And of course, open standards, who am I speaking to? X-Road is the open standard which enables all these databases to speak to each other in the way we need to. But of course, a lot of these things are not new. This is a paper from 2002, that's 16 years ago, where we look at what really affects a citizen's health and well-being. And you notice the biomedical is 10%. And, if people like me who are physicians who spend our life or spent our life trying to actually manage to improve what we do in terms of in the biomedical sphere. If we make a 10% improvement in the way we manage disease, it actually translates only in 10% of 10%, which is 1%. While all the other things around environmental, social, personal behaviors, genetic, and I would add the epigenetic, by the way, to your comments earlier, and also the microbiome and all the way that interacts with each other, which is absolutely fascinating. I think we're in a situation where we can really make a difference to people's lives, which at the end of the day is why we're all here. So, after all that, are we ready? And is Finland ready? And in many respects, I think if you're not ready, I'm struggling to think of who is ready, because Finland is very, very different for a variety of reasons. And if we think in terms of health and care globally, I think there are some really big changes going on. The big data players globally are really, I think they're building a new universe. The people who are really making the difference, the people who are really changing the way we think, are the data integrators. And to a degree, we have to also think where they are, because the people who are really making the big changes in terms of data integration and all the work that goes there tend to be concentrated in two geographies. In China, where you have the Alibabas and you have the Tencents type, these very big organizations, and also in the United States, of course, where you have the Googles, the Facebooks, etc. That's really quite interesting. And Europe, to a degree, is trying to catch up, is playing catch up here. Despite the fact that we have these wonderful opportunities around GDPR, which really opens up that discussion with the citizen and empowers the citizen far more. Yes, we have had problems associated with implementation of GDPR in Europe, because what tends to happen, of course, is each jurisdiction and also each part of the system puts on its own interpretation of that and adds on to it, and you have a mishmash in terms of the way it's interpreted. But I think we've got to get there, and we've got to get there fast. If we look to, for example, what's happening there was a paper only last week from Oxford. Nigel Chadbolt wrote a paper which looked at where data goes in Google Play, and he looked at 950,000 apps on Google Play and found that data went back and was shared with Google in 88.4% of cases, 42.6% with Facebook, 34% with Twitter. All this information is being transmitted in different ways in different places. That's not bad, but I think there is something more we need to do to ensure we also manage the data ourselves. So, where are we going with all this? Why is data so important? And I think we have such an opportunity here to reiterate the pathways that have driven healthcare in terms of treatment guidelines. The treatment guidelines we use are very crude. They're based on 20th century care, and we divide people on the basis of what we can see in males and females, in age groups, and being able, as was highlighted before in one of the previous speakers' intervention, we're able to then think in terms of screening people selectively based upon much more sensible ways of dividing them on the basis of risk, not only on the basis of age. So we can actually start looking at evidence-based care in a different way. We can start personalizing treatment pathways to the individual in real time, and you are already doing a little bit of that in Finland, and I think you have 14 personalized pathways from what I was told, which I think is incredible. I think that's great. And again, I go back to public health because I also work in public health in England. We have an opportunity here to have a much more precision, predictive, personalized public health approach to try to assist people in terms of behavioral change. Because, of course, with prevention becoming so much more important, assisting people to actually make that change is more important as well. So, back to, are we ready? And I think, again, you are in a place where a lot of people aren't, and in some respects I think you're in, well, if you're not ready, I'm not quite sure who is ready, because you already have this enormous and extremely venerable history in public health and also an empowerment of the people. It's interesting where you started. You started with cancer services, which for me is an absolutely essential enabler to activate people, to empower people, to give people the will and the understanding that they can actually change their health and care themselves rather than just be receptive to what happens to them. And you're actually getting the benefit from that now because of that wonderful word which is absent in so many jurisdictions all over the world: trust. That trust is actually one of the very big financial differences. So I'm really not only encouraged but pretty impressed by what I see here at the moment. But you have some problems still here, of course. The structural issues, the bringing of the municipalities and the hospitals down to 18 counties, I mean, that's some challenge. And, I come from England, as you can tell from my accent, and as I often say, if there's a job that I would like in England, if I never want to be made redundant, it's to become a sign writer, because we're very good at changing the sign over the door as long as we do nothing in terms of changing the way we work. And I'm going to have a job for life, and my children will have a job for life as well, because we've changed. We've been in reform since we started, but actually we haven't really changed anything, or certainly not changed as much as we should have. But there is a real danger in structural reform. We're experts at doing it, and if you're dealing with a complex adaptive system, which you are in health and care, the law of unexpected consequence is real. So you think you're actually setting metrics, you're setting systems, you're devising, and something happens which you just wouldn't have dreamt would happen and really transforms the system. It's a very, very difficult transition you're making. Some stuff you're doing which is excellent, you're empowering people even more, talking about personal budgets, talking about more patient choice, all excellent stuff. But then, of course, you have the biggest problem. You have aging populations, of course, and that implies increasing multimorbidity, and that makes the medicine by body part issue even more of a problem than it otherwise would be. So it's a whole series of difficulties I think we're in. So not everything is perfect, and we also need to remember our old friend Roy Amara. Roy Amara is a futurologist, and one of his sayings is we tend to overstate the short-term effect of changes and really underestimate the long-term effect of these changes, which can be significant. And I'll use as a case study very, very quickly the automotive industry in Germany, where we have, between BMW, Daimler, and Volkswagen, we have a global organization which is responsible for 20% of global sales, 66% of premium brands all over the world, and it could well all change really quite dramatically, because all that investment and all that expertise in pistons and internal combustion engine doesn't necessarily translate into expertise around batteries, ecosystems, and the new world we're talking about, which is basically taking a living room, putting it on wheels, and getting from place to place. So there is a caution here around that. And are we close to an iPhone moment? And by that I mean why I think that Finland is different and unique. Because if we think in terms of when the iPhone came into itself, all the technologies which existed, which together made the iPhone, were all in existence. I mean, all that changed. What changed is putting them all together in something that makes sense. And to a degree, I think you're in this, if there is something like an iPhone moment, Finland is the iPhone moment. I think you have the bits. And you're putting them together in the way you are, as we heard this afternoon, that I think if you're not at the iPhone moment, I can't think of anyone else who is. So that's sort of a very negative, positive compliment. The last few minutes of my talk, I just want to concentrate a little bit on the clinicians. I'm a clinician. I come from a very biomedical world. And I think there are some really urgent requirements that are necessary here, because even though in a place like Finland, your clinicians are much more attuned to the digital world, partly because you've had Cantor running for so long, partly because, you've got a history of doing this for a long time, I certainly can tell you that that is not necessarily the case globally. It's not necessarily the case in Europe. It's not necessarily the case in other jurisdictions other than Europe. Because there is still a lot of resistance to adoption and deployment of EMRs. There is an enormous amount of resistance around what a digital landscape will look like for a physician, because, of course, the power changes associated with that from people who are classically trained many, many years ago, especially people as old as me, in other words, are really quite significant. And physician burnout, even though it's not necessarily something you are concerned about as much as other jurisdictions, is a real serious problem in a lot of places. So if we start thinking in terms of the wonderful adoption of technology, the wonderful way in which we can put technology together to create these iPhone moments, and we ignore the fact that there is a group of people who feel disenfranchised, who feel as though this is something which is being done to them, I think we're going to have a problem, because, well, we do have a problem already, because the race to actually get digitization in the world is not actually, the physicians are not keeping up to that. In some respects, they're actually putting the doors up. In other respects, they're trying to find reasons not to do it. In other respects, they're welcoming it, but I don't think that is true everywhere. And this is some work we're doing at the moment, specifically devising programs for physicians to get them a little bit more attuned and a little bit more comfortable with what is going on around them. Because I think we need to accept that the world is changing incredibly fast around them. And it's really very difficult for them in some respects to keep up with what is happening. I mean, if we take an EMR often leads to the adoption and deployment of an electronic medical record. The first thing a physician sees very often is a sea of red flags that suddenly appears in front of them instead of a written medical record, because if this is not done sensitively, care gaps all become very important. And if you come to see me with a swollen knee, and all I talk to you about is your weight, your height, your blood pressure, and we don't get a chance to talk about your swollen knee, you leave there feeling really dissatisfied. I feel they're really very unhappy. And if this happens 15, 20 times a day, I think we're going to have some real problems. And we do have some real problems in other jurisdictions associated with that. So there's a whole series, and there are some programs, as I said, that we at HIMSS have developed to assist physicians with all this, because if we don't, we're in some difficulty. And again, back to the physician burnout issue, there's a whole host of things we need to talk about with physicians to start to get them to understand what digitization means to them. And digitization covers a whole multitude of things. The fact, and what's really changed, is that data-driven decision-making is now every physician's business. In the past, the only people who were interested in data were information medical officers or chief medical information officers, and they usually worked in a cupboard under the stairs in a building that everybody forgot where it was. And nobody really, other than them, was interested in this little thing that happened. But now, it's everybody that has to be involved. This is something which is affecting all physicians. You get people who work in radiology, people who work in imaging, who are really worried about artificial intelligence replacing them. Of course, because with a lot of these initiatives, we start with things we understand, and we start with things where there is some technology developed, which is really in imaging. So there is a whole explanation, there's a whole way in which you can deploy these technologies to act as clinical extenders rather than as things which replace. There's issues around cybersecurity, and of course, it's becoming ever so much more important, especially as we combine all these different databases from different places. And again, we're back to the situation where we have to manage this better. So there are a whole series of things we can do to actually educate our physicians, assist our physicians, to really get them to accept that digitization is something they need to welcome. And perhaps you're further down this road than a lot of people in Finland, but in some other jurisdictions, they sure need help, and they sure are asking us for help. And finally, we really need to do some more work around how we manage that interaction. Interaction with the new patients who are much more digitally savvy than the people who used to come before them. And also how we manage the integration of wearables. I mean, the clinical governance issues here are really quite significant. Suddenly, as a physician, I'm going to be responsible for actually being able to assess the information which is coming from wearables, as well as the information which I have on the EMR, and I've got information overload. And what you hear from physicians all the time is, we don't want to know, because if we know, we're going to have to do something about it. That's not helpful. But if we integrate the governance around all this and do it in a sensible way, I think we'll be in a far, far better way to actually take this forward. So, we have a real opportunity in June next year. Between the 11th and 13th of June, we have our European conference, and we have an opportunity to do what you don't do very well. And this is something you really do very badly. And I told you this, Jana, already. You do it badly. You don't talk about what you do globally, because what you do is special. And sadly, the only people who know about it are the Finns. But I think other people should know about it, because there's a lot that can be learned. Health and care systems, you can't take one and transpose it and put it in another place. It doesn't work like that. But by learning from how you've done things, and also by you learning from places like the place I come from, how not to do things, we're very good at telling you what not to do because we've made all the mistakes, you're in a very, very good place to actually take health and care forward the way we've seen described this afternoon. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Alesi. Any quick comments, remarks, questions on what we just heard? No? Okay, thank you. The thing that really kind of hit me was when you said how the big data players are building a new universe, and I think that really puts it really well in the way how quickly the scenery in the data use is changing. And it really brings you to the thought on what's this got to do with me pretty quickly, because a lot of things we've heard today have got to do with the way we use genomic data and kind of big scale things. And that's why in the next panel discussion we will be discussing on what's new for the customer and what's new for the patient. And participants of the discussion are Pekka Kahri, who is a director of information services at the National Institution for Health and Welfare, Silja Lindqvist from Patient Association, Rare Skin Disease, and Sanna Lauslahti, Managing Director from the Pharma Industry Finland. Welcome on stage, and maybe we'll just be cozy here, sitting here. Welcome. Yes, that seems to be the case this time. Okay, let's give applause to our panelists. And we've agreed on some introduction questions in order to get to know each other a little bit better. If we start with Pekka, what's your insight on will we get better in utilizing registered data in Finland sometime in the near future?
Absolutely.
Okay, you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Okay, so I've been involved with throughout the Isaacus project and the whole process of preparing the legislative drafts and in the pre-production projects, and I just reminding what are we trying to solve. So there's, first of all, there's lots of data, but the data users, they don't have a clear view what and how good is the data. So we need to increase the visibility, know what's there. Then there is how to get access to data, so there is bureaucracy that could be easier, so we're trying to rectify that. And then there is the risks related to releasing data because it's sensitive, so how do we manage handling of sensitive data? So all these have been planned and well drafted into our legislation drafts, and the pre-production projects have been assessing those. So preparing better metadata and systems for releasing metadata to know what there is. Then the preparations of a permit authority who would give services and the necessary administrative decisions to get access to data, and then modern IT systems where data could be processed and used in a secure way. And all this is like waiting to be set to go. So I'm very confident that this will. There's just minor details to be worked out, and our MPs next door need to do a little bit more work and make the law pass. But after that, we'll make good progress. I think that's clear. There's no doubt about that.
Okay,
just
good to know.
Tiny little, thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Silja, you represent patient association, rare skin disease. What does the utilization of well-being data look like here in Finland from the patient's perspective?
Well, I agree. We have many good initiatives and many good things happening. But listening the presentations here personally, I have been waiting for my genetic test coming with the result for 23 years, and I don't yet have it. So I'm really looking into this one, that we get better use of the data, and also representing rare diseases. And even we have in Finland also the ultra-rare diseases that only 1 or 2 people have. Those also are looking for help. So I'm really looking for that we do also the collaboration with on European level to kind of support all of those rare disease people. And because that is also interest, I think, for the medicine companies. They are putting more and more investment in that area, and we are also really looking for help.
Okay. Sanna, you represent Pharma Industry Finland. What are the main areas of interest in the field of utilizing data from your perspective?
So we can see many kind of utilization and point of views. Firstly, we have to speak about patients, because that's the only reason why we are alive and living also on the future side. And when we are looking at our side, we are looking at how our Finnish legislation is going on, so we should have passed by all of those all legislation what's inside. Okay, that's. And then we are also looking how it affects for Finnish growth strategy, how we can have more high educated places. But when we are looking like a future, there was one point of view which I would like to raise here. We need also new skills. It's not that we are having growth and we are finding like a new ways to have new treatments for diseases. We need people. It changes our nurses' work, it changes our researchers' work. We need totally new capabilities. So before we can make future to happen, we need those people to do it also.
And one of those skills probably is cooperation with others. And let's talk a bit about that in the beginning. In order to get straight to the point, in your opinion, what kinds of new ways of collaboration do we need in order to be able to actually serve the people with something new? What are the ways to do things together differently than before?
I don't know. I'm talking about maybe we don't know exact what kind of collaboration. We know that we need collaboration more with patients association, and in our association it's one of our main topics now, and I know our pharma companies are doing, not every day, but they are really actively taking patient association cooperation. But maybe we have to find like a new alliances which we haven't been think about. If we are looking like what happened Nokia, it was like a combination, different kind of skills and different kind of opinions. So maybe we have to just like close our history and look what kind of future, and maybe ask what are the collaboration which we haven't never think about it.
I actually have a proposal. In the last My Data organization meeting here in Finland in end of August, there was a very good workshop day where everybody participating from different industry, different skill set could propose on topics what to discuss, and then the people came together, because I think in this area we have had also, when we are taking the patient or association together, we normally take it in the way that we have already some written proposal, and then we wait for the written answers and comments to that one. It works, but it doesn't bring maybe the feelings and the real problems behind it. So maybe more face-to-face type of collaborations would be needed.
Yes, please.
If I'm looking at a little bit from a different perspective, you know, the collaboration between the data users and data controllers, those who are developing new knowledge or new products that would then benefit patients or citizens, they need to get new collaboration. I think that this is already well ongoing. Majority of the data that is we're talking about is collected for something else. It's collected for the treatment of the patient. It's collected for paying a social benefit or for statistics. And we've been talking about secondary uses. So now, if we get a new structure and a new permit authority in place, it will mean that there is somebody whose primary role is to promote the secondary uses. So far, it's been a nuisance. It's something that nobody is really interested about, but everybody who's controlling and having data, they need to somehow manage their secondary. Somebody is bothering me with requesting data, and I have to take care of that. Now it will be a primary role of an actor who can provide services so that the secondary uses can be more speed up. I think for us, the ethos should be that there should be more use of data, because it doesn't wear out. It gets better if it's used. It should be used in better ways, meaning that those who have skills to do it should use to have better projects, and those who know the limitations and the contents of the data should also be prepared to advise how the data can be used, and then use it sustainably, so that it's not somehow destroying the trust underneath, so that we can have a use of data in a sustainable manner. But this is already going on, thanks to Sitra in a great extent. There have been practical projects which have been ongoing around this, but it needs to be formalized, and it needs to then, you know, the data users, researchers and companies should start then proposing this. This is what we want to do. And then we get like answers to real questions and real needs that are coming from data users.
Right.
Long answer.
But a good one. As we've heard today, this preparation of the new permit authority and this digital health hub has been wide, and it has lasted for 3 years now. We've heard about the lessons learned and the experiences, but what do you think? What are the lessons from this Isaacus project? What have we learned in this 3 years' time?
I've been so much involved with this, so I don't remember what we didn't know 3 years ago. I think that what we have learned, what is important, is that practical projects where actors are doing things together, those are the most beneficial, because there you get to solve real problems, you get to discuss about the real issues, and not just like many of the working group or bureaucratic preparations, they are often like it's theoretical talk. But somehow making concrete projects together, that's a good learning. The second learning is that money makes the world go round. I don't think it's a new learning, but you need someone to invest in making these things going, and there Sitra has really filled well their position, because from state budgets there have been difficulties in funding something that doesn't really exist yet. So it's been, but it requires investment in order to keep things going. And then it requires committed people who are able to work together on different levels, on a very practical level, and then also on the management and director level.
Okay.
I'm just thinking what kind of role, because I was before member of parliament, and the first contact from Sitra was when I was a parliamentary person. And I can see from our pharma industry point of view, but also from that side, what it was the point of a politician. And maybe it's one opening case how we have understood how important data is. How important data is when we are doing research, how important data is when we are giving treatments to patients. And one discussion I have to take for in this point of view, there has been quite much discussion in this autumn. Do we have too much medicine? Same time we can ask, is there too little medicine? And how we can use data to have right amount of medicine for our patients. So I think so data changes our world, and we have opened our minds that it's not only Isaacus results, at the same time how we are taking that genome data and how we are making combination, and how important is that we are going to have those legislation from our parliament passed by, because future is now in the hands of our parliamentary people, and I hope so that there will be strengthened courage to make that decisions, so we can make the future for our patients better health.
Yes, please.
I have not been part of the Isaacus itself, so it has been interesting to come here now and listen. And what I think, as Charles Alessi was mentioning, worry about clinic decisions, I think we need a proper communication also towards normal citizens and the patients. And they're the patients' organization, which we also have a strong history. My small ichthyosis skin disease association having actually 30 years anniversary this year, and we are celebrating that on Saturday. So we have also a very good baseline on that one. So bringing those people together in this one and getting it even better.
Well, that takes us to the question. And I was about to ask, if we think about developing new ways to use well-being data, do you think that the voice of the people has been heard enough? As you just mentioned, that we need more of this cooperation. What do you think?
I think so. We need to have more voice of patients' point of view because mainly there's people who are against sharing data, and they don't remember the sharing data. It's for patients' health, and it's everybody's benefit to do it. And sometimes it's happened that we are giving more attention for data and how data is not going to use. And we are not thinking about whom we are doing that research work and whom we are giving therapies. It's for people. So we have to remember always data is for people and patients. So let's think about it, not just like keeping safe data away from research, for example.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to share and communicate that what has been achieved by using data and doing good research. And since the time frame is often very long, so we should now tell about what has been achieved in the past, you know, and where data has been also involved, even though it has been like a more traditional setting. So we should tell about what has happened, what has become available because of decades of systematic work, and do that constantly. You know, when the things move forward. And then it's also always good to have faces, you know, leading researchers, leading industry people, you know, persons visible, like Markus Perola is an excellent person, you know, visible both on and not only because he works for us. So, so with your own like personality be involved with the communication, telling that what has been achieved, what kind of work has been done in order to make better treatments and better services.
Yeah. Nice.
And one point of view, we had like the research about how our people think about giving their data and samples. It was last May, and there was the survey made by Sitra and pharma industry and THL, and there was 76% of our people who answered, they were positive and they were ready to give their information. But one point of view is that people are a little scared about to giving their data for industry, and I would like to arise question because our industry it's making investment about 35 billion in European level. So mainly our research is made in industry. So it's I hope that we will have also like an attitude. The data is needed to have also in industry research because it's maybe, I can say it's same as made by public sector. So I hope that we can have open discussion also about this matter.
Yeah, please.
But I think that comes back to the trust. Yes. And the trust is built on openness and transparency, and it's also built on the collaboration. So in order to get us involved, kind of, yeah, talking is more.
You know, we agree.
Good. And also I want to say that I agree with your point of view that do we put too money maybe sometimes to medicine? And that's a good viewpoint where the patients are often the experience what it means to live with some disease 24/7. What it means, what is the biggest challenges with that one? Because it's not always the medicine we are after. We are after something that helps in the normal life or the ordinary life. And it can be very different that what the doctors are thinking when seeing all the patients like me once a year, 15 minutes, and what is the true life then at home. So for that reason, respect the experience what the patients and citizens have.
Yes.
Yeah. Or
About that trust, it was also in my list that we have to be in like an industry. We are like a trusted partner for patients, so it's the main thing, and we should have transparency and openness discussion. So that's the main thing, the success in this area.
One thing in Finland is that the people really trust the authorities. So do you think there's something that the industry could learn from the kind of public sector actors that are being trusted quite high? Or how do you see this thing?
In pharma industry, I will take one example about we are having like a self-legislation. So we, for example, when we are looking how money is going to, for example, hospitals and doctors, we are investigating that every year, and then there's coming to report. So we are having own models to have this open data, how like money is going, or how we are using advertising. There's really strict rules. So we are really and the history of this self-regulation, it's quite long. So I think so it gives like an example how we think about that we have to be trusted. So we have to also have own self-regulation to do it.
Okay, any other insights on this trust issue?
I think that we've been quite easy about, for example, things like releasing data for research, which has been sort of a Finnish advantage also. So there has been, for scientific academic research, the data has been available if you can go through the bureaucratic hurdles. But I think that the idea of not releasing data but granting access in a controlled environment is also something that the different data users can sort of leverage, like industry, saying that they are not getting the data, but they are getting an access to a controlled environment where it can be used, where the trust of the public authorities is somehow reflected on the different data users, be they industrial or academic. But so far, our policies of releasing data for research has been quite relaxed compared to many other countries, which is something we need to also keep in mind, that it doesn't get overly difficult when new regulations are coming in effect.
And if we are looking, I'm still coming this your question about. I was thinking when we are making comparison like a public sector or industry, and we have same rules. When we are looking like a legislation, there's like a Genome Act. It gives our rules how to do it in public sector and how to do in private sector industry. So legislation, it's like our walls, and it makes also that trust for patients. So same rules for everybody.
Yes. As mentioned, we need trust between people and between different kind of actors, but I think that it's also essential for all cooperation between different actors, and for example for international cooperation. You mentioned the rare diseases as an example on where we need more partnerships with other countries maybe, but what do you think about international cooperation? Where do we go with it at the moment? Are we good at it? Should we learn something new when it comes to this use of well-being data? Yeah, please.
I don't know, do you want?
Yeah, I can. There has been a very good progress in that area during the last years. They are now, especially in the rare diseases, now there is the kind of competence centers which are built around Europe and looking for the networks among the clinicians to work together, and that has clearly brought up the kind of, how would I say, the cooperation as well as some part of the empowerment of the patient has maybe not been that traditional in Finland. So there has been maybe more background for that thinking coming from the European side. I think we learn more in every aspect if we work on a European level more together.
I think so that when we are looking like a data-driven future, it's not anymore local, it's global, more and more. And if we are looking like how our research project has been done, they are not like a local, they are global organizations. So we have to more and more look how data moves across our research groups, and so we can't like close our data for just like for nation use. So I think so only way to do research, it's like a global way.
And I want to add one thing that, for example, with Mind disease, I have the connections all around the world. So if I want to find some similar or help some patient, I have the connections already where to ask and how to ask.
It's clear that medicine and academic scientific research is global by nature. But do we have some gaps in when we're thinking about the other important use of data into monitoring and steering health services and the service system? So do we have enough international collaboration there? So I would say not. We've been maybe too much looking into Finland for the past 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, with the SOTE reform being on the drawing board. So maybe we should try to build more and maybe connections to countries which are similar enough to Finland with public services and maybe where national registries are somehow used, and this might make sense, maybe worth an investment in the coming few years.
Okay, yes, please.
And I'm just thinking about from this your disease area and about outcome-based therapies, and when we are looking what kind of medication is the best. So I think so there's need to be, when we know after there's like a new medicine, and so we are collecting real world data, how it affects, so maybe it's like a one path to do, so then we can reach really that outcome-based healthcare.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes left. Let's just take a quick sneak peek at the future in the end. In your opinion, what are the most interesting and exciting new possibilities that new ways to use data can establish? What do you personally wait for the most?
I wait for actors who have great ideas to come forward and tell them what they want to do, and then jointly think about what kind of data there is in Finland. So somebody said that we are like trying to enable something great to happen, but we bureaucrats, we rarely have like very bright ideas. Sometimes we do, but rarely. So come forward, those who are like the sharpest thinkers in the world. We would want them to come to Finland and talk to us, tell them what kind of things they would want to do with our data, and then build a project, maybe a small project in the beginning, and then growing it into a larger scale. But it requires that somebody moves. So we can enable things, but nothing will happen until somebody does something on that enabled platform. And research and scientists will do that if they get funding. But I think that also corporations should come forward with their thoughts. What would you want to do? What would you want to do? Pharma. with your billions. With your billions.
We want, for example, we want that Finnish people are the healthiest citizens in the world. So let's start the change happen from Finland. But do I answer that question?
Yep.
Or do you want first? No. Okay. And we have heard here many excellent stories, and we can say that future, it's really fascinating, but it's still on the table. So the next thing it is to make it happen and make it real.
For me, as I was a child, I was dreaming of the pill that I could take every day, and it would kind of take care of the whole treatment. That hasn't happened. So now I'm looking into that, finally get the gene therapy so that we know everybody born in Finland, that what they really have. And we could give them help on the normal day life and the hope that there will be also place for the rare diseases in this world.
And that's a great closing comment for this discussion. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Next we'll have a pair discussion on health data, ecosystems and growth. This can also be a debate or something in between. We are not quite sure. We'll see how it goes. But we've only got about 15 minutes, so it should be interesting. Welcome on stage Asta Wallenius, who is the Head of Development at the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment, and Pekka Sivonen, Executive Director of Digital Transformation of Finnish Industries Ecosystems at Business Finland. And some time ago, Jana here wrote a blog post in which she said that this whole Isaacus project has been something of a collaborative exercise. Pekka, you work at Business Finland, which among other things aims to boost innovations and help different actors to build networks. What does Isaacus project look like to you from this networking perspective?
Business Finland is all about building ecosystems, and Isaacus has been very good in terms of introducing the idea of collaboration for various stakeholders, because there's a lot of data out there and a lot of actors, and we just need mechanisms and funnels how to bring these actors together to build a joint vision, what can be built on top of the data we have today. But still, 90% of the data that we have today was created over the last 2 years. And if you think that the Americans or Chinese would have taken the value out of all of this, it's not. It's still early days. We can figure out and get back on the map with our continent and Finland.
Okay. Asta, you work for the Finnish Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment, and the same question to you. Do you think that Isaacus has helped in creating new ways and forms of cooperation?
First of all, Jana's blog is an excellent one. I encourage everybody to read it, so thank you for that. As to how Isaacus has helped in creating new ways and forms of cooperation, so I think it has especially enhanced the so-called public-public collaboration, so the collaboration between hospitals and registers and different registers and so on. On the public-private side, and I think this was already mentioned by Jana herself and Pekka Kaari earlier, so in such a quickly moving area with technologies and use cases and so on, so we need to stay abreast of the evolving use cases and use areas of data and technologies relating to number of things, and that is certainly a learning that can be carried forward when planning further the, for example, this coming service operator or other other services, and understanding the use cases and the future scenarios also helps us to draft better regulation, enabling regulation, and build capabilities in the universities and companies and such. So it's a tremendous area, like Pekka Ala-Pietilä said in his opening speech, so we don't yet know what all this opens up, and that's why it's good to, even if it feels like a short time, 3 years, so during that time our understanding of the use cases has evolved from pharma to information management for the benefit of better social and healthcare, and how to utilize big data for artificial intelligence and as such. So the pilot project's excellent. Thanks for Sitra, thanks for everybody who has participated, but it's kind of a true monster we are working with as to the opportunities available.
Okay, thank you. So we've learned a lot in 3 years, but today we've heard a lot of talk about ecosystems, and it's said that cooperation is kind of the strength of a small country like Finland, but what do you think, where do we go at the moment when it comes to building ecosystems around well-being data? Are we good at it, or?
Of course, yes we are. Yes we are, but we can get much better on this one. And Charles made a statement on the iPhone moment, and I think that the momentum that we are building and we have in our hands today is highly related to the history of this country in the mobile handset business. Everybody knows the story of Nokia mobile phones collapsing. That alone created 1,600 companies in the area of IoT, advanced analytics and artificial intelligence. This is almost unfair to the rest of the world that we have this asset in our hand. And we have the richness of technology and the amount of combinations that we can permutate based on what we have today in terms of at the level of how we are organizing the national healthcare for the future, the university hospital network in five biggest cities, and the richness of the companies addressing any layer of the healthcare technology. We have the sample cases of Aura, Nightingale Health, Nona. This is the kind of stuff of the future. And as Charles also mentioned, the story of Finnish healthcare is largely untold, that it's unknown to the world. And this is exactly why we are working together in long term with HIMSS in order to really put the spotlight into Finland and show the world what we can do and what we are already doing and implementing here.
Okay.
So I think we have had a good start, and a special Finnish competitive edge building up is the one of co-opetition, and that means when competitors collaborate, so they see a bigger market out of their joint activities than reaching the goal alone. And this is we have examples around the biobanks and around the data, such as FinGen and Clever Health Network as examples. Also, very exciting feature in our ecosystem is the participation of the people, and I mean everybody, not only patients. We all are patients at some point and level, but truly through this MyKanta and other features building around Kanta. So we are able to input our own data and utilize those ecosystems around this one. And okay, on a weekly basis we get fact-finding missions currently in Finland, and there is a lot of interest, although we have probably kept it slightly hidden, but area where we could do even better is to start to increase the visibility on what we have and what can be done. And of course the legislations, as we know how they will be confirmed, gives us a good basis also for this one. The key questions are around legislative processes currently in all those fact-finding missions and Team Finland delegation visits all over the world.
Yes, relating to the legislation, as has been mentioned before, we are waiting for the new legislation on secondary use of health and social data to be enforced. And as we are waiting, it's a good time to think ahead and ask how do we grasp the possibilities of this new legislation, which it will hopefully bring.
I always love to quote myself, and I said 4 years ago in the 375 years celebration of Helsinki University in my closing remarks that health cloud will be the biggest cloud of them all, and if Europe plays the cards right, this cloud will have a silver lining. World Economic Forum estimated May this year that a sum of $100 trillion of value will be unleashed because of digital transformation, data and artificial intelligence within the next 10 years. 2/3 out of that value is going to be based on platforms. And those platforms are based on data. So there's a wide blue ocean out there for us to grasp, and we just need to decide where it is and with whom we are going to conquer and sail those waters.
Okay.
I think we should already start working on, and some already are, on the skills, competencies and capabilities. So we will have a wealth of data available and for Finland and Finnish universities, healthcare companies to grasp the opportunity of investments and value add to Finland. So we need to be able to provide value-adding services and use that data across service providers and also in various companies providing value-added services. Also, we need to start to look at resources, time, and amount of kind of recognized change management and service design as discipline, as number of organizations, I would claim, need to revisit their practices going forward as they understand what can be done with help of this data. And as number of new structures will be proposed to be established in the regulation, so as they get established, so then again the use cases and frequent dialogue with the key customers on developing further those is probably a skill also that needs to be invested in. And in our administration, so Business Finland has already started personalized health program, and for example, in the innovative public procurement area, health data is a big team, and there are activities going on in this area. So we are doing a lot of enabling factors, and Pekka Ala-Pietilä claimed that we have coined a new term in Finland, enabled by public sector. It was an oxymoron probably for Ala-Pietilä earlier on, but he was talking a bit about this collaborative governance and what it means. So that's kind of all what we will be able to do this, but then it's up to universities or companies or research institutes to really grasp the opportunities. And like Pekka Kahri said, that there is reasons we are probably in the public servant side currently, that we need somebody to come and tell and explore what all can be done with this data.
Yes, please.
Maybe a couple of adds on. Thanks for pitching on behalf of Business Finland. Besides the personalized health program, we are also working on two actually programs which are worth mentioning here. A Smart Life, which is also covering the living environments that support health on a medium and long term. And another program that we are working on currently is related to trust, because that's ultimately in an environment and in a society where data becomes money, trust will be the central bank. And we need to get this, in order to retain the trust element, which is the highest in our country. We as a government cannot go with anything in our hands that the citizens would vote with their no vote. Yes, that's what I had to say.
Okay, final question. We have a couple of minutes left. Final question on the future. Do you think that Finland and the Finnish actors are ready for the challenges the future brings? Are we capable to renew? And how do you see the overall development in the new years?
Small
Just
question
1 minute
with
answer,
one
please.
sentence to answer.
Kind of a hurry
Definitely
here.
we are ready. Finns are always eager to try new things. Whether our capabilities and competencies and courage for major reforms is on right level is then a big issue for us as societies, and also for specialists, courage to use dialogue and facilitation and new type of tools is an area where we could do better. Probably Finns often think that things have to be ready before anything can be started, and as I was working in Nokia long ago, we had a saying that the skate has to be frozen before you can skate, or lake has to be frozen before you can skate, and in this meaning that you need to build some kind of basis and then start to do the tricks and learn the competencies, and this is a bit similar type of thinking probably could help us as a society as well to go from beta versions forward.
Okay, thank you.
In the area of healthcare, I think we also need to think for the future about the entire life cycle and the whole life as it is. It's a very complex thing. Health alone is a very complex thing, but we need to bring in the elements of predictive taking care of and proactive taking care of health and happiness. And also food and nutrition will be part of, by the way, the Smart Life program that we are planning. And these are the key building blocks in which you build a totally different approach into how to provide health and happiness to your citizens. And I think Finland, if any country and any nation, has the best position to grab this opportunity.
Okay, those are good words to end. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, talking about the future, it's time to introduce Ms. Liisa-Maria Voipio-Pulkki, who is a strategy director from the Ministry of Health and Social Affairs. And she will conclude the theme and summarize what can we expect next. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to have my own presentation on the screen. Meanwhile, I was supposed to say something about the future. Thank you very much for giving a civil servant the last word. Well, we as the government, we are responsible for, nothing happened yet, for writing enabling legislation. That is our key task in this society. But at the same time, we try to do our best in facilitating public discussion, horizon scanning, public-to-public cooperation, public-to-private, and how many P's you ever want to have there, you name it. But unexpected things do happen, and I haven't heard in this meeting so far, I think, the word climate change. So, we can plan for the future, but at the same time, we have to think in a multidisciplinary fashion and take all the possibilities, risks, future scenarios into action. But let's go back to the business of this meeting. I know everybody is waiting for the cocktails, so I will be short. I have about 8 minutes left. And I will spend that wrapping up things that we have actually heard about already. So I will make use of this opportunity to thank my colleagues in the 2 other ministries, the Ministry of Education and Science and Economy and Employment, for the cooperation during the Health Growth project. It feels a little bit strange to call it a project anymore because it seems to be our daily business, and also the big funders, Business Finland and Academy of Finland. This has been around for 2 consecutive governments, coalition governments, regardless of the parties that have been involved. And we look forward to some sort of a continuation also after the next elections. We don't know, it's not up to us civil servants to tell what kind of a political statement that will be, but at least we have established new actors and we are responsible for keeping them up and running from now on. And actually in our framework budget for the next 4 years, that is guaranteed to that extent that anybody can guarantee anything in this world these days. So this picture has actually been shown before, and I think that we are responsible in the future to see the forest for the trees. Because digitalization has been around and e-health has been around for most of my professional career, which is pretty long so far. And actually our medical professional organizations were among the very first to introduce the concept of decision-making support to our healthcare system. But we really need to see the forest for the trees, develop an open interface and national and regional integration solutions. Secondary use of health and social data is a key element there. We all know that we would like to see this happen, and we need to have the courage and the money and the enabling legislation to make it happen. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that the next government will have this in its core program, regardless of who is going to be the Prime Minister party and the other coalition parties. So the legislation of the secondary use of data has been already described here. It is absolutely a key piece of legislation. We as civil servants are not in the position to advise the Parliament, but we really look forward to have that process completed and then have our mandate to take that forward. It will create a new public authority in this country, which we have planned to have in association with our National Public Health Institute, better known as THL. And then when we have this public authority, only after that phase we can start to develop the interfaces with other authorities and companies and universities, which, for example, ASTA has so well phrased in the previous debate, if it was a debate. But it's a key issue, because it's not the money, it's not the people, it's not actually even the data that we are going to use and concentrate or have at hand in that new authority and the whatever is going to be activities around it. It's the dynamic effects. It's really the dynamic effects of this new way of using data in this country. We have been asked by politicians that when will be these new authorities be financially self-supporting? Never. Because they will have public authority functions and we will need state budget money and government backup to keep them up and running. But the dynamic effects that go out to the innovation value chain will be really, really huge. So the maturation of operations is the vision that we need to develop further. But we have to be humble in the beginning and show the user cases that were also mentioned here, also for the public, other public authorities, then for our healthcare and social care personnel, because the data that they feed in the system are crucial, that their quality and timeliness is accurate, accurate data, and they will only do this in the long run if they benefit in their daily work from that. For example, in the form of a decision support system that comes to their desks, to their computers, to their iPads, and will be there immediately available to make their life easier than it has been so far. And then after that, not after, but simultaneously, we need to develop the other user cases and sometime in the next few years have a really integrated ecosystem. I have to say at this point that there is envy in the air. So we have actors in this country, and now we are starting that phase when we really have to see the true value of working together and not trying to compete with each other. It's not going to be an easy job. I'm coming back to this in the end of my short presentation. So we need to develop these infrastructures, but at the same time, it is necessary for a small country like Finland to collect all the expertise that we have available. And that's why the government at the same time has had a long-standing project of supporting not actually quite centers, but maybe clusters of excellence where our 5 university hospital districts, universities, key experts and institutions come together and create these centers of excellence. Not even the Helsinki area, which is fairly big in the Finnish context, is big enough for the population basis to have all the materials and data and even experts around. So this is something that we from the government try to push forward. There are new centers like the Pharmaceutical or Drug Development Center, which is still in its very early steps, in its infancy, but they are all in the government's program, and they will be there also after the next elections, I'm pretty sure, because they actually do have a basis in the present legislation with very few exceptions. So building it together is the key issue. Government backing is needed. It is needed, of course, for the legislation, for the well-functioning healthcare system. Actually, I think that the key to success in Finland is the degree and extent of digitalization, our clusters or centers of excellence, and a health and social care system, a health system which is fit for purpose. Unless we have that, it doesn't help too much to have very sophisticated digital systems, but you need to have a health system as a test bed and also as a system that benefits from the government's investment in those things we don't directly support our daily activities. We visited with our permanent secretary the Cleveland Clinic Innovation Summit last week, where, by the way, HIMSS was also present. And the interest in the Finnish health and social care system in the US environment, where health systems consolidate right now, is immense, it's huge. But I would like to say 2 points in the end here. One is the role of the people, the citizen, or the one that resides in Finland. We haven't yet understood what kind of empowerment digitalization will actually bring forward? Patient or customer empowerment. We haven't realized it yet as professionals and as health system planners. But it will be there, and it will work for our good, I'm sure. But we also need to take care of the data that's not created by authorities, but created by ourselves in our daily lives, that is available. Because that will add so much to the health-related information that we have available for all these new inventions and tools and whatsoever we dream to have in the future. Government backing is essential, but I would also like to write the EU backing. Sorry. I know Brexit is probably coming, but Finland will be the presidency of the EU in the second half of 2019. We are a small country alone, and we need to facilitate the development of the digital market within the EU. And health, because of the cross-border healthcare issues, is there in the forefront. It's a tricky game because we have to respect the national health systems, at the same time find ways how we can make maximal use of all this wonderful information that we have available within EU. And that will be, I'm pretty sure, in our agenda as the EU presidency country next year. Thank you very much for your interest. That was a fantastic meeting. I very rarely have the opportunity to sit and listen to fantastic presentation, and I'm thankful personally for that. But I'm also very thankful to Sitra, because without the Isaacus project, I'm sure we wouldn't be able to take the next steps also as the representatives of the government. Thank you very much, and applause to Sitra.
So it's been a long afternoon, and thank you very much, Lisa Maria, for nice words and applause for the whole audience. I think considering the fact that this has been a birthday party for a person that no one really knows, Isaacus Rotovius, it's been quite a good feeling around. And I think most people share the feeling with me, but that there are some obstacles, but also lots of common vision that we can build on. And also I feel that in the maybe old days, maybe Sitra was a little bit like Al Bundy in the TV series of Married with Children. We had deep pockets with money, and then we were just putting out the money. But now I feel that we are maybe a little bit more integrated in the system, and we've succeeded in being more like a part of the community. So it's not just giving away money whenever someone needs it, but more like trying to ensure that there's also a lasting impact from our projects and our doing. So we will not definitely stop. We will most likely stop being very active on Isaacus, but of course we are very keen on seeing how the world will look like after 1 year or so. So I think that the only missing part from the great substance and from the great network we have in Finland, and also very witty people, is the branding and maybe a group of people, speaking heads, going internationally, speaking the story of Finland and the Finnish health data and all the enabling factors we have in place already. So that's something that I think that different parties are already working on the story of Finland and how to promote it, how to put it together. But also I think we need a group of very inspired people who go to different international conferences, seminars, and share the same story. But yeah, this is my closing. I hope that we will have plenty of opportunities to meet again, but before our ways go separate, there's plenty of drinks, there's plenty of food, as always in Citrus events. So please stay with us and enjoy. And I really thank you all for the project and also for today. Thank you.